and welcome to The Well-Tended Life. I'm your host, Carrie Wilt, a speaker, writer, and heart cultivator who is on a mission to help you grow through any season. I'm here today with my special guest, Hayley Solano, who has graciously agreed to be a part of this new series called The Practice Of. And this series was inspired by the words of my great-great-grandmother in her famous book, The Secret Garden, when she wrote, "You just try it," urged Martha, handing her the skipping rope. "You can't skip to 100 at first, but if you practice, you'll mount up." So last week we explored the practice of meditation, and this week I invited my friend Hayley to talk to us about the practice of creating, finding, and sharing magic. The good kind, of course. So welcome, Hayley. Thank you for being a part of this.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
Oh my goodness. Well, why don't you do this? Introduce yourself to the audience. Tell them who you are and what you do and where you live and all those fun things.
Yeah, so my name's Hayley Solano. I'm from Southern California. I've always described myself as a creative soul and a storyteller. I'm really passionate about celebrating storytelling and sort of the inspiration and magic that stories bring to our lives. I have a blog called An Enchanted Life that's a celebration of all things whimsical and romantic with an emphasis on storytelling.
I love that. Now, have you always loved stories? Is that something like, did your mother read to you as a child, or?
Yes, exactly. So I grew up on fairy tales and children's classics and having tea parties, just very whimsical childhood. And I just fell in love with storytelling without ever really realizing it at the time because it was so much a part of my life, and it continues to be.
Oh my goodness. So talk to me really quickly before we get started too much on the magic side. Tell me about the season that you are in. It's one of the things that I talk about in the Well-Tended Life is being aware of kind of, what season we're in, what are we doing, what are we growing? Can you talk to me a little bit about kind of where you are, what you're doing these days?
Yeah, so it's definitely been a combination of things, and I think that's probably the same for a lot of people considering the circumstances of this year. But lately, it's been this combination of very dreamy and thinking about the future and what I'd love to see come to fruition, but then also very realistic and breaking down those dreams and the steps that will be necessary to take to see them come to life, and really thinking about the seeds that I'm planting today with consideration to what I want to see bloom tomorrow.
Well, that's interesting because it kind of sounds like something that you would normally do in, let's just say, December, kind of leading into a new year. Do you typically do this kind of reevaluation and looking forward this time of year, or is this kind of just everything like everybody else, like everything got shook up, I need to reevaluate, figure out what I'm doing?
Yeah, so I think it's a little bit of both. I love doing a check-in during the summertime since it's halfway through the year. My birthday's in the summer, so that's kind of another check-in point. And then, of course, with everything that's been going on, I think that we've really been challenged to think about what's really most important to us, what are our priorities, and focusing on those.
I love that. My girlfriend and I, we always try to do this also in August, right before school starts. Because you're not a mama yet, right? No. Okay. So for us mamas out there, like the beginning of the school year starts a whole nother year technically for us. Everything changes. And so I love the idea. I think in the summer is if you haven't been reevaluating your goals and your dreams and all of those kinds of things, take time in the middle of the year to do that. I think it's so healthy.
I agree.
Oh my goodness. Okay, so talk to me about magic. So it's funny because I think that word sometimes can be like scary or polarized. You're like, oh, no, we don't do magic. And I mean, I grew up in a Christian background, and it's like, whoa, 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 whoa. So talk to me about, what does magic mean to you? Like, what is your definition of magic?
I love that you said that because I think it's really important to not necessarily just focus on the dictionary definition of the word.
Yes.
And define it for yourself because it's so different from person to person. For me, I just think that it's any moment that you experience this feeling of, I'm so glad to be here. That moment of a realization that you're just so happy to be alive. And I think that those moments can come upon in different ways. So maybe it's something really simple like blowing bubbles on the perfect summer day and you're reminded of a childhood memory that means a lot to you and you're taken back there. Or maybe it's a big event like an engagement or a birthday or a graduation, but those moments when you just realize how happy you are to be here experiencing what you're experiencing in that moment, that's what magic is to me.
It's interesting you say that. One of the things that I'm really working on right now is being present. I'm an Enneagram 7, so I don't know if you know anything about the Enneagram, but it basically means that I am constantly on to the next thing. Like I am like, okay, I need to be right here. And you said that several times, being aware of like what's happening right this minute. Do you have any thoughts on like, how do you have like a technique that you use or like snapshots or like, to stay in the moment?
So something that I've been practicing a lot this year that I'm not great at is patience, and just realizing you have time and just thinking about that, kind of having it in the back of your mind on a regular basis. When you approach life that way, I think it's a lot easier to be in the moment. Just having that mindset, not necessarily thinking about it literally, but just having it in the back of your mind. That way you can approach moments with patience and really be able to appreciate what you're experiencing.
Patience is a good word. It's a hard word. I got stuff to do. I just think sometimes patience is not my strong suit, but I am really trying to practice that staying in the moment with whatever's in front of me and whoever's in front of me without rushing on. So we kind of talked like tiny bit about it, but where did this quest for magical, your basically quest right now to, spread magic and leave that everywhere you go. It was truly growing up.
So yeah, I grew up with it without even really recognizing it as I'm practicing having magic in my life, since it was just so much a part of my life already. It wasn't until I got older I started realizing what I was doing. When I got older and experienced more challenging chapters of my life, as we do, because things get more difficult as we get older oftentimes. I would find solace in the stories I used to read as a child, or songs I've always loved, or movies I've always loved. And it was just such a wonderful feeling to be in the middle of a difficult chapter and then get lost in a piece of inspiration and magic that suddenly makes you feel like, oh, everything's going to be fine. It's such a gift to receive, but also to give. And so when I started experiencing that, I knew I really wanted to give that gift to others.
How did this journey of it start, as far as how did you start to share it? Because I think there are a lot of people who feel like you, that they have something to give and aren't really sure like how to go about that. And when you go and you follow Hayley, you'll see she's done an amazing job, crafting the message of magic and spreading it everywhere she goes. But like, what were those first initial steps for you? So you had this aha, hey, I need to share this with the world. Then where did that go from there?
It was interesting. I don't think many people know this, but it actually started out with music. I write songs and I sing. And so I started sharing my original songs with a hope that they would resonate with people and make people feel less alone. That feeling of, oh, someone understands what I'm going through. So it started off with that. And I also just think, it's a matter of finding the story that you have to tell and then sharing it, because you never know who you can impact just by sharing your story. So it started that way. And then I started on social media just to kind of build a presence for my music. And then it's kind of morphed into something bigger, because I started sharing other parts of my life, other pieces of inspiration that add magic to my life. And those started resonating with people. So right now, it's mostly about storytelling, like I said, and specifically classic books like The Secret Garden.
Well, let me ask you this. So your life is starting to revolve more around storytelling. Clearly, you've told stories through your blogs, and as well through social media and through your music. Are you working on a book? Do you have aspirations for that?
That is something that I wanted to do ever since I was very young. And It's something that I'm definitely working on and I plan to see come to fruition, hopefully sooner than later, but absolutely.
Oh, good. I mean, anybody who has this much passion for anything should be sharing it in every form or fashion that they possibly can. I think that's one of the greatest things about the world we live in right now is that, back when my great-great-grandmother was growing up, there was really just, two media, really. I mean, it was newspapers, right? And then magazines and books. And you didn't have all of these other ways to do it because everybody consumes things differently, right? I'm not, and especially even in different seasons. I'm personally not in a season where I can read books. I just don't have that time, but I can listen to them, audiobooks while I walk. That's been a life giver for me.
I agree. I think it's so wonderful that there's just so many different outlets for creativity nowadays, and we're so lucky to have all of these options to both release and create, and then also consume. It's wonderful.
Are you still doing music at all?
Sort of for myself currently. Like, it's a really nice outlet for me. And I have plans in the future to continue to promote it and share it. But I've just found in this season, storytelling, just in terms of books and literature and celebrating the storytellers that came before us, is something that I feel really pulled to currently.
Oh my goodness. Do you remember the first book that you read? Like, do you remember your favorite as a child? What it was?
So, not necessarily, but I do remember when I was very young, my mom got me a gift for Christmas, and it's this compilation of classic stories that are abridged, and it's called Great Girl Stories. And so there's just abridged versions of, Pippi Longstocking and Little House on the Prairie, Little Women, Anne of Green Gables, A Little Princess, and I loved that. I loved that there was such a variation of stories, but they all had a similar mission and sentiment, and I still revisit those even now.
Oh my goodness. Well, and they all have such great messages for girls and women. The books that you mentioned are those that have stories that really kind of defy the time period. It doesn't matter what time you read it in, it's still very applicable even in what I call time of high adventure. Even today. And so I love that. I think that's also very much a part of your message, as well as the stories behind the stories too.
Yes, that's one of the reasons I love classics, is because they're so timeless, but also particularly children's classics. What I think is really fun is that you can learn so many beautiful, wonderful lessons regardless of the season of life that you're in, but they're being taught by children. And I just find that so powerful and so beautiful to open our minds to, we can learn anything from anyone. It doesn't matter their age or what they're going through. I love that.
It's interesting. I was interviewing Mark Munden, who is the director for The Secret Garden, last week, and he was talking about the fact that the children was really who had the biggest impact on him throughout the filming. I think there's something about that childlike state that opens our minds and makes things come from a more authentic place of joy, perhaps, and allows everyone to kind of almost like peel off the adult in us and just remember those innate feelings again. And it's almost like the kids, I think, maybe in those books give us permission to do that. Because I know for me, even it's hard to give yourself permission to play and to roam and to wander and do all those things that kids just do naturally. And being able to see it reflected in them is not a bad thing. Hey friends, I know you're loving my interview with Hayley, but I wanted to break in and tell you about her other business, FromTheHeartCreative.com. Hayley is not just a blogger, musician, and spreader of magic, if that's even a word, spreader of magic, but she is also a social media strategist for a range of well-known brands, including best-selling magazines, Bella Grace, Willow and Sage, and Mingle, and she could be a strategist for you. Throughout her years in social media, she's developed several authentic strategies for effective visual storytelling, establishing a meaningful relationship with audiences, and exponential follower growth. At FromTheHeartCreative.com, you'll find a wealth of proven tips and strategies to guide your social media journey and make it easier for you to meet your goals. So if you're looking to grow your social media, check her out at FromTheHeartCreative.com. And could you do me a huge favor today? Will you take a minute and hop on over to Apple Podcast and leave a kind and thoughtful review for the Well-Tended Life podcast? You see, this is how people find us. And every positive review helps to unlock the door for someone else to get in on the magic of life tending too. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Thank you ahead of time for taking the time to do that for us. Now, enough of all this. Let's get back to the interview with Hayley to see what magic blooms in the rest of this conversation. Okay, so let's go back to magic a little bit. So one of the things you talk about all the time is basically, how to spread it, how to find it, how to share it. Can you kind of give us some practical tips and tricks for some of those things?
Yeah, so like we were discussing before, it's really important to define what magic is to you as an individual because it's so different for everybody. And I think a lot of times we'll look at someone's life and think, oh, it looks so magical. I wish my life was exactly like theirs. And we want it to be like theirs or we want to emulate it. But it's really important to be authentic when you have a magical life and think about, okay, if I'm inspired by someone's life, what are the elements of it that I can apply to my own life in a way that's very genuine to me? So defining what magic means to you is definitely the first step. And then once you have that definition, being able to build off of it. So one thing that I do on a regular basis, I call them magical or enchanted reminders. So an example of this would be, let's say you think the ocean is so magical and you love going to the beach. Mm-hmm. So maybe doing something as simple as wearing a necklace with a shell pendant on it, or decorating your living space with a nautical theme. So you have that reminder of that place that is so magical to you. I love doing that because it's really simple and easy and it doesn't require a lot. So yeah, those are just a couple of tips that I use and I find to be really helpful when I'm trying to cultivate magic in my everyday life.
What is something that is, let's just say currently around you right now, that reminds you of the magic?
So definitely the books, of course. And then I also collect teaware. And I just love the idea of previously owned, so vintage china. Mm-hmm. And in that way, you're collecting items that have a story of their own. As you can see, I'm all about stories, and I just try to find them and celebrate them any way I can. So collecting something that's beautiful to you, that's previously owned, and imagining the story behind it. So teacups and books are a couple of things that bring magic into my life.
I love that. I had a teacup collection growing up. As well. It was my favorite. Everywhere we would go, I would pick up a teacup in an antique shop, and I had a ton of them. And when we moved here, the movers dropped my box. Mm-hmm. So I still have one, but it's that same thing. I have it sitting up on a shelf, in a place that reminds me of those days where, we would do the same thing. We would invite friends over and we'd have tea parties. I also love the mix mash of it all as well. I think it's such a reminder that, everything comes in every shape and size, and, it's almost like there was one for every occasion. I loved the blue on this day. I loved it's like picking out my coffee mug in the morning. It made me happy, but maybe someday I'll collect them again. I loved them. So it's interesting. I want to go back to this idea of what is magic, and, everybody needs to define it for yourself. And in The Secret Garden, Francis wrote, "The sun is shining, that is magic. Flowers are growing, the roots are stirring, that is magic. Being alive is the magic, being strong is the magic is in me, the magic is in me, it is in me, it is in me. It is in every one of us." And I think sometimes we forget, especially when things are hard or messy, or, when there's struggles, that it is everywhere naturally. We just have to have our eyes open enough to be able to see it. But the other funny thing is, as I was pulling quotes for this episode, I noticed that in The Secret Garden, magic is capitalized almost every single time. It is an actual character in the book, and that is exactly how Frances treated it. And in some parts of the book, you could see that maybe she was insinuating that magic was God. And in other parts, she was insinuating that maybe it was nature, or maybe it was our own self-empowerment. Maybe, there were so many, she wasn't really clear. She kind of left it up to all of us. And which I think I love that. I love that you're kind of leading people in and saying, hey, you define what it is, and then figure out how to surround yourself with it.
That was one of the things that really struck me when I read The Secret Garden for the first time as an adult, was recognizing that capitalization of magic as, a character. But then again, she left it open to interpretation, and really helped the reader to realize that they could create magic, find magic, and that magic is within them.
Absolutely. Well, and it's also that reminder too, that magic is a practice, and we have to continue to seek it out. It is with magic happens around us, but when we do our part of the work to do it, it makes it even better, I guess is probably what I'm trying to say. I think sometimes we forget that part. We're just sitting around waiting for magic to happen sometimes. And it's like, no. I got to do my part too. Well, every time I do a podcast now, I wrap them up with joy, goodness, and growth questions, because it is a part of my daily practice, inspired by The Secret Garden as well. Mary said that she would never forget that first day when her garden began to grow. And I realized that I wanted to make sure that I wasn't missing the joy, goodness, and growth that was happening around me. So in my journal, every morning I sit and write down, I look at the day before, I sit and write down one little bit of joy, one bit of goodness that I'm grateful for, and one bit of growth and progress in life lesson that I saw from the day before. So I'm going to ask you those questions now to wrap it up. So talk to me about what is currently bringing you joy these days.
Yeah, so earlier this summer, I created what I called an enchanted summer bucket list. And I created it for myself, but also my audience. I shared it on my blog so the community could all cross off items together. And I was very intentional about only including activities that everyone could do regardless of their location, especially during these circumstances. So I added very simple activities like doodling with sidewalk chalk and making a wish on a dandelion, finding a ladybug, just very simple acts. And those have brought me such joy. And it kind of goes back to what we were talking about, being taught lessons from children and reconnecting with who we used to be when we were kids. It's sort of nostalgic. These are things that we used to do on a regular basis at one point in our lives. And maybe we stopped because we got too busy, or we grew out of it. We didn't think it was cool anymore, whatever the reason might be.
Right.
So lovely and joyous to experience those again.
Oh my goodness. I love that. Okay. So talk to me, go a little bit deeper on this one, and tell me, what are you most grateful for right now?
Right now, it's really been connection with other people. And I'm sure a lot of people feel this way, during this time of isolation. Being able to connect with people has just been so lovely. And it's something that, in any other circumstance, we're used to connecting with people all the time, but it's just meant so much more during this time. Talking on the phone or FaceTiming, or, even what we're doing now, instead of emailing or texting, has just been so nice. In fact, I recently met a new friend on Instagram, and we knew when we came across each other's pages that we were kindred spirits. We live nearby to each other, but we haven't been able to meet in person yet. And so we chat on the phone once a week. And it's so nice to make that connection, of course, but also it really signifies that the world's still going. things are still happening. We're still moving forward, even if it doesn't feel like it. People are making new friends. And I love having that reminder when things feel a little bit stagnant some days.
I love that. All right, final question. What's growing on in your life? What have you learned lately? What kind of signs of progress are you seeing, big and small?
A couple of things. Patience and being okay with the unknown. And
yes, girl. All of us.
those are two things I've never been amazing at my whole life. And I've kind of worked on them here and there, but especially right now, it's been really important to just face them head on. And it's been really wonderful to do that. The idea of it's okay that I don't know exactly what's going to happen tomorrow, but also being aware of what I do have control over, and not just being aware, but also celebrating it in a way. So, like I said, I don't know exactly what's going to happen tomorrow, but I do know what I bring to the table. I know what I bring to my interactions and my work and any other experiences I might have throughout the day. And I think it's one thing to be aware of that, and then another thing to celebrate it by being really intentional about bringing love and inspiration and beauty to your interactions and your work and your other experiences. So that's just been a really lovely practice to do very intentionally. And yeah, it's just been a really nice growth period.
I think you're resonating what most people are feeling right now too. Just learning to kind of live, holding your hands a little bit more open with, what's happening tomorrow, which is actually funny, I think, and a little ironic that we even thought for some reason that we knew what was going to happen tomorrow, right? But yet we are dealing with it much better. Maybe I think just letting go of that control, and I'm finding peace in that. In a way that I don't think you could have told me that, 6 months ago, that I would have found peace in letting go of the need to know. I think it's actually making for a little bit better of an adventure.
I agree. I feel the same way.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on and talking about the practice of magic. I'm just so excited for people to hear your views and your ideas about how to go about doing that. Tell people how they can find you and follow you and all those things.
So I'm at Hayley Solano on Instagram, HayleySolano. And we have a lot of fun on there. There's always usually a giveaway to enter, or we always exchange recommendations for books and movies. And it's just a fun celebration always over there. And then my blog is called An Enchanted Life. It's anenchantedlife.com. And it's an extension of that. I really dive into storytelling, as we were discussing earlier. And I would love for you to come visit.
Are you doing a book club right now?
I do. So my book club is called An Enchanted Book Club, and we read it's usually a classic every month, or a contemporary book that has the same kind of sentiment as a classic. And the first book that our club ever read was The Secret Garden. That's actually how I connected.
Right. What are you reading right now?
So it's August when we're recording this.
Right. Yes.
Reading Alice in Wonderland, and then next month in September is going to be Peter Pan.
Oh my goodness. So it's interesting you're doing Alice in Wonderland right now. I got a sneak peek of the Secret Garden movie, which when we're recording this, it comes out this week. Super excited. And I've had a really hard time describing it. Because it is it's something that you've never seen before. You're gonna love it. But the best way I can describe it is as if you are think you're looking at the secret garden, but you're looking at it through the keyhole, and you almost like fall into it like Alice in Wonderland does, into this world that the garden is bigger and greater and does things that you would never expect it to do, and responsive and endless and all of these things, and then you don't know where reality is and where imagination stops and where flashbacks are. Like there's just this whole, it's like 90 minutes of a dream ride, but it's very Alice in Wonderland-ish. The people who made Harry Potter and Paddington are the ones that did it, and It's crazy cool. But it made me also, it makes me wanted to go back and read Alice in Wonderland again.
Oh, I can't wait to see it. I'm so thrilled. When I first read The Secret Garden as an adult a couple years ago, I was just so immersed in the story again. And it was just kind of a funny coincidence. I thought, I'm going to look up and see if they're going to make another one at some point. And it was already in post-production when I looked it up. And I was so excited. So I've been waiting.
Yes. It's the first time, it's the first movie. I mean, it's been 25 years since the last movie, which is so crazy because it feels like we grew up on that movie. But it is, it's going to bring a whole nother generation into it, which is not a bad thing, right? It's going to inspire more kids to read classics and more customers for you too. All righty. Well, thank you everyone who has taken the time with us to listen or watch on YouTube. We appreciate you being here. My hope is that your eyes are now open to the magic around you just a little bit wider, and hopefully this inspires you to go spread some magic around you as well this week. So until next time, y'all, blessings and blooms. Thanks, Hayley.
Thank you.
Oh my goodness, friends, I had so much fun talking with Hayley today. I want to encourage you to go and check out and subscribe to her blog, it'sanenchantedlife.com. And also go take a look at her beautiful Instagram feed. I know you're going to find lots more magic and inspiration there at Hayley Solano. That's Hayley, Hayley, Solano, Solano. Now stay tuned here for next week's episode as we continue this Practice Of series with Giovanna Caposa, who chats with us about the importance of healthcare, which is way more than just self-care, y'all. So make sure to follow The Well-Tended Life on Facebook and Instagram, and subscribe today to our podcast and YouTube channels by the same name. And until next time, y'all, blessings and blooms.